Hi, I'm Yana.
Hi, I'm Simon.
Welcome back to Rooted in Dirt HQ.
Today we're going to be talking about goal setting, why it's important for endurance athletes, for trail runners, what are the effects of goal setting on performance and psychology, and hopefully you'll find it really informative. So enjoy.
And as always, please feel free to interact with us. If you've got thoughts, questions, comments, please comment below and we can get back to you. So, Simon, with that, why is it important to set goals?
Good question. I think if you look at research, we'll talk a little bit about research and our own experience as athletes and coaches, but I'll start with the research. Goal setting has an impact on both performance and psychology. So people who set goals tend to perform better than those who don't set goals. If you want to be really technical, it's sort of a medium or moderate effect size difference between those who set goals and those who don't. And you've got to consider when it comes to performance, even a small effect can have a massive impact on final outcome in your race or whatever it is. So it's definitely some benefit to setting goals. I suppose the psychological elements are the underlying benefits of why performance might be enhanced with setting goals. So depending on the type of goal you're setting, you get a different psychological response or profile. So we can maybe dive into what these different types of goals are if you want to, and that might then explain why performance is enhanced with goal setting.
I think that would be useful. So let's get into that. What are the different kinds of goals that one can set?
Well, there's lots of different kinds, and they can also be, this is something in the literature, they can also be very specific or non-specific goals. So a very specific goal would be like a precise time that you want to achieve in a race, whereas a non-specific goal will just be that you want to improve on your previous race time. So both of those are performance goals because they look to increase your current performance ceiling, but one is highly specific and one is non-specific. Now, the research doesn't differentiate between specific and non-specific goals other than to say that they are both beneficial. So goal setting, again, is a good practice. But you typically get three broad categories of goal setting or goals that one can set. The first being process goals. And I think those are sort of underrated goals, especially I don't know if it's a road running versus trail running thing, but I think especially in road running, process goals are underrated because road runners just love times, personal best times. And there's a reason for that, and we can talk about the differences between road and trail later. But process goals are goals which one sets about things they want to achieve in training, building into a race. So they're normally behaviors or skills that one might want to improve, that sort of will help you achieve your outcome or your performance goal. So a process goal is, for me at the moment, I'm training for a trail race, back into trail. So my process goal is I really want to get into the gym, and I'm prioritizing going to the gym twice a week, every week, because the performance goal is that I want to improve my strength. So the process is going to the gym, and then if I do that routinely, hopefully I improve my strength. Process goals could also be, using poles in training, like hiking poles. And we talked about this last week, right? I'm going to make sure that I go and I take my hiking poles out. Now, the performance goal attached to that is maybe that you want to climb faster or better in a trail race. Then performance goals I've talked about now is like normally related to times in running. So how fast do you want to run? That's sort of can be quite tricky depending on the course. But we'll commonly get athletes to say, there's a threshold I want to break. I want to break 3 hours in the marathon or hour and a half in the half marathon or whatever. And again, those are, if you look at control, performance goals are slightly less in control than process goals. So we have almost full control of process goals. It's within my control to get the poles out and go and use them in training. It's within my control to go to the gym and do the strength work. The performance goal is slightly less so. So yes, I do have some control over running sub 3 in the marathon. However, there are uncontrollable elements that come into that. So the course, environmental conditions, is it hot, is it raining on the day, but also my fitness state. So often we'll get clients coming to us and saying, I want to run 13 peaks in sub 24 hours and I've got 6 weeks to prepare. And so when you look at performance goals, you've also got to look at where you are fitness wise and what your goal is, and that's also going to give you some consideration for achieving that performance goal. And then outcome goals are the last one, and outcome goals are outcomes relative to other people. So I want to finish in, this is something we've talked about, arc of attrition, right? Where do I want to finish in the 40k? Like, do I want to finish in the top 10? That would be amazing, but is that realistic? Well, it probably depends on who rocks up on the day, right? If you get a deep field with lots of sponsored athletes, then, the chances of that are probably out of my hands or out of my control. So I think outcome goals, when you talk to really high level athletes, I want to win an Olympic gold, or I want to win this marathon or this half marathon. They are really important because there's sponsorship and there's those sorts of things related to that. But I think for most people, outcome goals are really challenging because they're sort of out of your control to a large degree. And so when it comes to the effects of goal setting on performance, it's got a lot to do with the psychological effects. So if you look at that continuum from process to outcome is the least controllable. And so when you have athletes who set a lot of outcome goals, they tend to have greater anxiety and diminished satisfaction. Whereas if you have athletes who set a lot of process goals, that tends to improve their self-efficacy, which is known as self-belief. And when you've got greater self-belief and you're constantly achieving your goals, and also your process goals are hopefully aligned with your performance and outcome goals, then as you're ticking those off, you sort of build that, that motivation, that satisfaction, and that's what ultimately leads you to better performance. So long-winded way of saying what the 3 goals are, but you hopefully get my gist.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a little bit later on we'll touch upon sort of what the key takeaways are and what our advice would be to athletes that come to us. But first, I'd like to take a little bit of a step back and just ask you about, why do you think it might be more challenging to set goals for trail and ultra running when compared with road running races?
Yeah, I think, it's difficult in trail and ultra because of the amount of variables in those kinds of races compared to road. So I always say this, and I say it with a little bit of sarcasm and take a pinch of salt, but road running is same. If you run London Marathon or Newport Marathon or Brighton Marathon or New York Marathon or wherever, around the world, it's 42.2 Ks. There's not going to be a heck of a lot of climbing. There's maybe some people will say Boston is a hilly course or whatever. Yes, but to an extent, we're not talking trail running hilly. They're normally in sort of the between seasons, like spring and autumn, so it's not super hot or super cold. They're in those seasons for that specific reason. So there's a lot of predictability to that format, and it goes all the way down to track, 5,000, 10,000, etc. It's just highly predictable, the same every time you approach it. Yes, there's tactics, there's pacing, that kind of thing, but by and large it's highly controlled. And so when it comes to setting performance goals, like I want to run sub 120 in the half marathon, if you know where your fitness is at and you've got a good measure of that, you can start to dial in those paces really well. When it comes to trail, if you're running a trail race of 40 kilometers, arc of attrition, that's got 1,000 meters of vertical elevation. gain. It's coastal, so it's technical underfoot. It's cold. It might be rain. It might be slippery, but it's very different to like a midsummer race of 40k in the Lake District or in Scotland, where you're going to be doing double, if not triple, that amount of elevation gain on ridges. You know, could be scrambling, could be quite, you know, some kind of dodgy sections, or you might need poles versus not poles. So all of those different attributes that make our sport so amazing are also things that create challenges when it comes to setting performance goals. And then if you throw in the novelty of like, oh, I'm trying out a new distance, like I'm progressing from marathon to ultra or 100k to 100 mile, then you've got all of this unknown territory that you still need to explore, and you don't know how your body will respond. So with trail running and ultra running, you know, there's some serious challenges there, more variables around nutrition, etc. All of these things can impact on your race. So I don't know what your experience has been working with trail runners, but do you often get trail runners coming to you with performance goals, like I'm doing this race and I want to achieve X time, or how do you navigate that initial consultation process when an athlete onboards and they're preparing for a certain race?
So I have seen quite a gendered response to this question, a gender disparity. I'd say typically that my male athletes, and this is a generalization, of course there are outliers, but typically my male athletes have been more keen to set goals that fall into the outcomes bracket, whereas either performance and outcome, or to be honest, mostly outcome, whereas my women athletes have been setting goals that relate more to, I want to feel more confident when I run. I want my body to feel stronger. I want to be less anxious. I want to sort of fill my cup.
Yeah. So I hear you. Do you have any insight as to why that is? I mean, is it ego driven? So you also get something called an ego goal. So you get mastery goals and ego goals, which are sort of on two ends of a continuum. So some people do something because they've got this intrinsic drive. They want this like self-improvement, and they get joy out of that. So, you know, if you're talking about, I don't know if it's anxiety, but let's say, you know, I want to be able to be in the mountains and feel comfortable, you know, that I can take on challenging things and I can do, you know, and so it's like exposing yourself to that is like mastering this part of your, I don't know, your running journey, let's say, where some people are more ego driven. So it's like, I want to be able to do that ridge line because then I'm going to look really cool and people are going to be like, wow, that's an awesome runner, you know, what a fantastic gnarly segment or whatever. Do you know what I mean? So so there's different sort of personalities maybe that start to come through. So is it just, I'm just wondering, the woman versus men sort of thing, are men just more ego driven maybe? Is that something that, can we say that? Are we allowed to say that?
I think it depends on what motivates you in the first place. Why do you run? Why do you enjoy running? What are your motivations behind it? I wouldn't say that my male runners are more ego driven necessarily. I do think that if I had to draw the distinction between the two, that typically the male runners would assume that more can be done in shorter time. So they might have over ambitious goals for where they currently are in their training status, whereas actually I can confidently say that typically my women athletes actually undermine their ability and would rather err on setting a somewhat more conservative goal in order to almost definitely reach it, as opposed to...
But then there's like culture. I think what you're actually seeing there is like these cultural or societal like norms and expectations. So like men, as a man, you know, there's sort of this thing like you need to measure up against someone else. You know, you need to be seen to be that guy. And perhaps with women, there's multiple things coming into play there, whereas first they don't see that, or they've not been within how they're raised or how society sees them. That's not their space, you know, the physical, athletic, putting yourself out there. So they first of all don't know that they can set those kinds of goals. And then secondary to that, because they've obviously, you know, not set those kinds of goals before, they sort of set more process goals so that they can achieve those, and then hopefully go on to, you know. But I think that's your job as a coach, is like, okay, well, you've got a lot of process goals, yeah, that's fantastic. Can we stretch you a little bit and get some performance or outcome goals in there? And then sometimes, and this is what I deal with, is like trail runners come in with outcome or performance goals, but they've got no way to gauge, especially in trail running, whether they're capable of doing that or not. And then it's about sort of, I don't know, managing expectations, because nothing is worse than setting a goal and not reaching it, you know, in terms of motivation and satisfaction. So it's okay to not reach your goals all the time, but you want to make sure that you are reaching some goals to keep you motivated. You mentioned sometimes you have athletes who come in with a goal for a race that they have done before, versus a goal for a race that maybe they haven't done before, like a performance or outcome goal. So how do you manage those conversations between, you know, someone who has done the race before versus someone who hasn't?
Well, I mean, if they've done it before, we go and look at the data, right? And we look at what was their injury status and history before that race. What was their training status? What was the block building up to the race like? Where were sessions missed because of life, work, illness? You know, look at all of that. And
so
then
what's the margin for improvement, basically? Yeah.
Exactly. And try and see so depending on when you set that goal, because also sometimes athletes like to surprise us by entering races last minute, and then we don't always have all that much time, but ideally, if you're setting this goal before the block starts, then you know what margins you're working with, and also you can, on a trail course, with things like Strava and segments and all of the you know, the resources available to us today, you can analyze where time can be made up, and you can analyze past mistakes. And that's why it's so important. Something that I do always with my athletes is that after a race we do a debrief, whether that's verbal, whether they put it down into writing and share that with me, but we document that, because inevitably something goes wrong on the day. It could be nutrition, it could be lack of sleep or focus in the week before the race, it could be multiple kinds of things within the race, getting caught up at the start, going too fast, so many different things. And if we've noted that down, we know what can be improved upon in future. So I think it's certainly easier to come up with a realistic goal if you've done it in the past. If you haven't, that's really tricky. Then there is a sense of, we need to make an educated guess.
Do you need a performance goal? That's my question with someone. So it's more a question, because I have athletes who come, they're doing maybe a new trail race or a new distance, and they're so like fixated on, I want to get this time or achieve this position. But surely if you do the work in training, if you focus on the process goals, then the result will take care of itself in a way. Like, I still think you're setting yourself up for failure. I almost want to say to any, maybe it's just my approach, so the rooted in dirt, you know, like contrasting perspectives. But could we not just say your goal is to finish the race? Like, you're doing it for the first time. You go out, you race as hard as you can. You race smart. Obviously, you don't go out and, you know, burn all your matches in the first 5K or whatever. But you race smart and you race as hard as you can. And then, like you said, you debrief afterwards. Okay, what did we learn? And now we have like a marker for what we should be able to do. I don't know. I'm just wondering whether do we need a performance goal or an outcome goal, or can we start to get athletes to think about setting logical process goals that will help along the way?
So, I'm definitely in camp process goal for sure. I think realistically, the best is to have a combination, and it will depend it'll depend on the personality of the athlete. Again, what motivates them. We certainly play a role in advising them, right? And I think that at the end of the day, actually the strategy that has worked best in my experience has been on race day. It's a celebration of all of the effort that you've put in. And if you have a good day out there, celebrating everything that you've put in, if you have that sort of kind of mindset, it'll be a good day regardless of what your time is.
You'll know as well. Like so go out, celebrate, have fun, race your hardest, and you'll know if you've like put your all in or if you haven't. I think there's another way. So yes, and you mentioned this as well. So you can look at the past data and you can go and say, right, so let's say I finish in a trail race 17th out of 170. I'm using that because it's easy for me to do the maths. Then I finished in my relative rank was 10th, like 10th percentile, if that makes sense. And so what you can do is you can forecast, and I do this for myself sometimes. I'm doing a new race. What is the 10th percentile in that race over the last 5 years, let's say? And then you can create like a range, that an upper range when maybe it was really a competitive year, and a low range where it was less competitive. And then you can you do have some margins to work within, so that your athlete, you're almost satisfying that need that they have to have some sort of performance goal. But you're basically saying that's almost like a secondary goal. The process goals are the most important. And then, if we achieve that, then we've got a reference point for the subsequent year.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of things that I want to touch upon. That is that, firstly, with that percentile approach, it would be, so demotivating for someone who's only holding on to that, for then it to be by chance a super stacked field. Sometimes races get cancelled or people don't attend them. They go to the very next race and all of a sudden you've got top athletes, and your goal was to come top 10, top 20, and you get pushed off. You have the best day, brilliant race, you come 35th, you're super disappointed. But the other reason why process goals are so important is because sometimes race day doesn't come. And that is something that hurts a little bit, speaking about and thinking about that, because I have been struggling with an injury for 54 days.
And counting.
And counting. I think I'm almost in the clear. But if you don't have process goals and the race doesn't arrive, then
you're left with nothing.
You're left with absolutely nothing. No sense of achievement for months and months and months of hard work, of sacrifice, not only your own sacrifice, but the kind of sacrifice from your friends, your family, your children, who, it is a team effort to get there. So that's another reason why it is so important to layer in different kinds of goals.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think just to come back to what you were saying about the percentile thing, I know what you mean. Like if it's a stacked field, then you're going to go tumbling down the rankings for sure. And I've seen that with my own races at like Ultra Trail Cape Town. 1 year running a slower time and having a higher rank, and then the next year running a quicker time but being further down the field. And that's sort of weird to process as a runner. You're like, I've run faster, but I've finished like worse. But this is almost why I think outcome goals, unless you're like Jim Walmsley or Killian or Courtney or someone like that, it's like outcome goals are almost, I just think, a bad idea in trail running. It's like, because you can still set a performance goal. What I'm saying is you can set a performance goal around a percentile or still a speed if you know what that is relative to previous races. So it's possible, but I think all of the variables around heat and nutrition and cramping and elevation and all of these things, distance, time on feet, they all become part of a really complex puzzle. So you never know how it's going to play out race day. So goals for you moving forward. I know. So I've talked about arc of attrition. I've got process goals. I want to get in the gym twice a week, every week. And there's certain kinds of strength training that I want to do within my 12-week block, which are probably going to be unique and novel to me, with the goal of building muscle strength, the performance goal of building strength, and the buzzword mechanical fatigue resistance, or whatever it's called. So that's sort of my major focus. I don't know, I haven't looked closely enough to know what the time goals are, but I am one of those athletes, like, I don't really, not that I don't care, but like, if I'm well prepared, then I'm well prepared. You know, I've done the best that I can to get to the start line in the best possible shape. So I'm much more focused on like training process than race day itself, which is why I typically have like really long builds before races, because I get a lot of joy out of, oh, in this training block I managed to increase my mileage, or I did more intensity work or whatever, and sort of I enjoy that process. So I've got the arc of attrition on the horizon. Do you want to speculate about what you may or may not do?
Yeah, so we're taking the Duval family to arc of attrition. I'm doing arc of attrition as well. It is not an A race for me. It would have been, but I'm going to set myself up for failure, even though we've got between 10 and 11 weeks to go. I know for a fact that I'm not going to be in a position to give my all during that race. So I have process goals. I'm not going to divulge my strength training history for fear of being judged and coming across as very hypocritical when it comes to what I preach to my athletes. It has not been a strength of mine. I do not love it. But I am deeply committed to it now. And this is my first significant injury of my entire running career, which now spans about 10 years. So I am taking it seriously, and I'm using it as a lesson and a wake-up call. So I will be strength training properly twice a week, every week, for the indefinite future.
Yeah. So the process is around rehab and prehab. So like doing the things that allegedly you've neglected in the past. Perhaps
slightly. And performance-wise, to become stronger, to be the strongest I have ever been as a runner. And to be honest, it will be a massive achievement to finish arc. I'm doing the 50 miler in a good physical state, not re-injuring, basically. Yeah, exactly. It is disappointing that the goal has dropped down to I want to get round that course, because I did have ambitious goals for it. However, my current A race is the Thames Path 100 miler. It'll be my second 100 miler. My debut 100 miler was earlier this year. I did the South Downs Way, and I wanted to potentially take a few hours off of my current 100 mile. Not wanted to, want to. Yeah. That is still very much the goal. So come early May. When is that? May. 2nd of May. That is my A race.
So if you can focus on process into arc, and that puts you in a better, and this is why I say it enhances self-belief. So if you start to see that you're putting in the work towards achieving your process goals, and it's having a positive effect on, you know, how you feel about your running, and you've already said on our run back from the gym today, you were like, this feels amazing, I'm running without pain. Yeah. Even though it's just like 1k down the road, but like for you, that's a massive motivation.
That was the first time I'd run in more than 50 days without pain.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's going to be, it's not just a linear thing. It's going to be a bumpy road. But I think if you almost treat arc as one of the process, points along your journey, then there's no reason why you can't, go from there and start to look at more performance outcome goals when you're healthy fully healthy again. So everyone, wish Johanna the best with her calf injury. Wish me the best as well. It's been a long 54 days. I'm just kidding.
Careful.
No, it's been tough to see you struggle with an injury that's meant that you can't run much at all. And it's been difficult to figure out what's actually wrong with you, which I think has been a challenge as well. So we hope that you're going to be back to firing fit as soon as possible. And for now, we want to wish all of the Rooted in Dirt family, if you made it this far, well done. We're wishing you the best with your own goal setting, especially ahead of 2026. Can I say that? Is it 2026 coming up? That's crazy. If you have any questions or you want some help establishing some process, performance, or outcome goals, feel free to drop us a message on YouTube under the comments down below. Can I do that? Like and subscribe and share to all of your network if you enjoy the conversation. And yeah, make sure you set some of those process goals. Don't neglect the process, because your training and your journey in running will pass you by if you're just focused on outcomes.
Absolutely. Looking forward to speaking next time.
Cheers.